Welcome back, Focus Learners. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for today's explainer. We're going to be going on an incredible journey today, diving deep into a 450-year epic history lesson on one of the most powerful, yet honestly kind of overlooked dynasties in global history. We are talking about the Chola Empire, India's Ocean Kings. I mean, think about this for a second. How exactly does a regional family, basically a bunch of wealthy rice farmers managing agricultural land, eventually build a navy so dominant that they dictate international maritime trade routes, influence China, and build towering skyscrapers made of solid stone? Okay, let's dive into this and unpack this massive transformation, because it is just wild.
So here is our class syllabus for today. 1. Origins in the Kaveri. 2. The first rise and fall. 3. The Queen's PR comeback. 4. The Imperial Golden Age. 5. Foreign conquests and trade. And finally, 6. The final decline.
All right, Section 1, Origins in the Kaveri. We need to step back in time to the 8th century Kaveri floodplain to really set the scene here. Let's anchor ourselves with a quick timeline. Now, an early Chola kingdom is actually mentioned way back in 300 BC in the Edicts of Ashoka, but historians don't really consider that a full-blown empire. Our story, the true rise of the Imperial Cholas, really kicks off around 850 AD. That's when a local leader named Vijayalaya capitalized on some regional rivalries to capture Thanjavur. And then, jumping to the 19s, his descendant Parantaka begins seriously flexing his military muscles. But there's a huge catch here. The early Cholas couldn't just boss people around and demand taxes. They shared this territory with things called nadus. These were fiercely autonomous local village assemblies. They handled irrigation, taxes, collective decision-making, all of it. They hadn't actually had a centralized king in 1,000 years. So the Cholas couldn't just demand loyalty out of nowhere. They really had to earn it. Which brings us to Section 2, the first rise and fall. Earning that loyalty required massive resources, which meant going to war. It's the violent reality of medieval state building. Parantaka Chola used a very specific step-by-step cycle to build his state. And it functioned almost exactly like a modern PR campaign. Step 1, loot the neighboring Pandya kingdom. Step 2, take all that plundered gold and gift it to local temples, which creates jobs and builds community wealth. Step 3, this incredible generosity completely wins over those independent Nadu assemblies we just talked about. And finally, Step 4, with their enthusiastic backing, you expand your army and just repeat the cycle all over again. It worked brilliantly. Well, until it didn't. Because unfortunately, Parantaka's inflated ego led him to challenge the massive Rashtrakuta Empire to the north. And the hammer fell hard. The Cholas were absolutely crushed by Emperor Christian III. In just a devastating dramatic blow, the Chola heir, Prince Rama, was literally stabbed in the back while riding atop his war elephant. I mean, you can't make this up. After that, the Chola resistance just completely collapsed. Their cities were ransacked, and the entire kingdom was plunged into total darkness. Moving right along to Section 3, the Queen's PR comeback. Just when it seemed like the Cholas were completely doomed, a truly remarkable figure pulled them out of the ashes. Dowager Queen Sembiyan Mahadevi. She was an absolute mastermind. She realized they needed a new strategy, so she basically weaponized religious devotion into a genius public relations comeback. She went on a massive building spree, constructing 12 colossal temples dedicated to Lord Nataraja. And she didn't just put them anywhere. She strategically placed them right along the kingdom's vulnerable frontiers. This sparked a total craze for Chola architecture, employed thousands of locals, and completely united the community's spiritual and economic well-being directly with the Chola throne. And that brilliant setup leads us into Section 4, the Imperial Golden Age. Thanks to the Queen setting the financial and cultural stage, her grandnephew Rajaraja Chola and later his son Rajendra were able to usher in an explosive era of pure imperial dominance. The contrast is just staggering. They went from being regional elites sharing power with peasant assemblies to a hyper-centralized superpower. Rajaraja essentially became India's answer to Alexander the Great. We're talking about a massive standing army controlling a sprawling footprint from the Ganges River all the way down to Sri Lanka, the Maldives, and right out into Southeast Asia. And to give you an idea of the sheer, absurd scale of Rajaraja's ambition, consider this number, 130,000. That is how many tons of solid granite were extracted from a quarry 45 kilometers away and floated down the river on giant coracles. Why? To build his ultimate legacy, the Brihadishwara temple. Then there's this number, 80. 80 tons. That is the weight of just the solid stone capstone crowning this magnificent temple. Just try to wrap your head around the engineering required to hoist an 80-ton block of granite all the way to the top of a tower with absolutely no modern machinery, no cranes, no hydraulics. It is completely mind-blowing. And how high up did that 80-ton stone have to go? 59 meters. That is the height of the main temple tower. Think about that for a second. In the 11th century, this functioned as a gleaming medieval skyscraper. If you walked into the capital city, it completely dominated the skyline. It was this inescapable physical monument to the Cholas' total supremacy.
But honestly, the most staggering number of all has to be 7. This entire massive complex was built in just 7 years. Because Rajaraja demanded it be ready for a specific anniversary of his reign, a literal army of stonemasons toiled relentlessly. In fact, it was so rushed that if you look really closely at it today, you'll find corners that were left rough-hewn and completely unfinished. It's actually a perfect physical metaphor for a highly ambitious, rapidly expanding empire.
Now let's talk about that rapid expansion in Section 5, Foreign Conquests and Trade. Under Rajaraja's son, Rajendra Chola, the empire looked beyond the Indian subcontinent and took to the open ocean. Historians often call this phase pseudo-colonialism. Keeping our historical neutrality here, we can basically just view this as a hyper-aggressive economic strategy. The Cholas used their overwhelming military and naval power to control resources in foreign territories, funneling all that wealth right back to fuel their domestic prosperity and all those massive temple-building projects. And they definitely were not modest about it, for sure. Just read this boast from an ancient inscription on the Thiruvalangadu plates. They're literally claiming that their king outshined Lord Rama himself. Why? Because the Chola army didn't need a magical bridge to cross the ocean. They just sailed right over with a massive fleet and burned Lanka to the ground. Their naval supremacy was unmatched. And that unrivaled naval power paved the way for their most audacious campaign ever. You see, Tamil merchant guilds, famously known as the 500, functioned essentially as medieval, multinational megacorporations. They controlled massive wealth along the Maritime Silk Route. When the Srivijaya Empire in Southeast Asia started messing with their trade monopolies, these merchants directly lobbied Emperor Rajendra Chola. To protect their bottom line, he launched a highly risky, huge naval invasion straight across the Indian Ocean and completely crushed Srivijaya. But, of course, nothing lasts forever. Section 6. The Final Decline. Let's map out how it all fell apart. Things really took a turn post-1216. You get these much weaker kings taking the throne. By the mid-1200s, rival kingdoms like the Hoysalas and a totally resurgent Pandya Empire started chipping away at their borders. By 1279, it was over. The last emperor was defeated, and the Cholas were wiped off the map of India. But actually, wait. Check out the very end of this timeline. This is absolutely wild. A rebel branch founded by a Chola prince actually maintained a military base thousands of miles away in Cebu in the Philippines, and they survived there all the way until the Spanish invasion in the 16th century.
But how did the main empire collapse so fast? Well, while the fatal blows definitely came from foreign enemies, the real rot started from within. It was a classic case of an empire hollowing itself out. Greedy nobles actively evaded taxes, which completely starved the state of revenue. Combine that internal fragmentation with weak leadership and rival kingdoms playing brilliant wedge politics to keep everyone divided, and the collapse was pretty much inevitable.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Yes, the formal political entity of the Chola Empire vanished from India in 1279, but their brilliant administrative innovations, like those autonomous local assemblies we talked about, deeply influenced India's modern local village systems. Plus, the profound cultural and architectural mark they left across Southeast Asia is still incredibly visible today. So what do you think? Did their empire ever truly fall? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, Focus Learners. Stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.